The two disgruntled youths marched into the school. It was clearly a suicide mission. That certain people they wanted to murder, and then the rest were just murdered randomly and before they killed themselves. And I've watched various programs and read various accounts of this, but to me it doesn't quite adequately explain why they did it. There's a pathology about us humans which I don't really understand, and I don't think we fully understand. We don't understand why we do these things, especially if they're not driven by fear. Fear can turn off your cerebral functions, and perhaps in certain circumstances you do things which you couldn't possibly have perceived as possible. I still have my doubts there about this. But in cases regarding the bomber at Khost, it's rather bewildering. And I had a cousin who, of course, was lost in the bombing. And he was a very gentle, kind man. You would never perceive that he could mean ill to anybody. And I think he served his country nobly. And we mourned his loss, of course.
This question asks that you look in the rearview mirror as well as the front window. It has to do with the February 1989 establishment of the Arab Cooperation Council among Jordan, Iraq, Yemen, and Egypt. It was short-lived. Where is this concept now? None of the four countries are part of a sub-regional organization as they once were. Mm-hmm. And there was a dynamism to it, a rationality to it, a logic to it. Is the idea still under consideration?
Yeah.
If so, how and why, and if not, how and why?
John, did anyone ever tell you have a great radio voice? It's very deep. I used to always enjoy speaking after someone who had a high voice because I have a deep voice, but I can't outdo you. Now, it's a good question. I think it was simply overcome by events themselves. We had the case of the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq and the subsequent developments, and then we moved quickly into Madrid and Oslo, and it didn't really progress beyond that. And then we had the application of economic sanctions on Iraq, and I think there it quickly perished as an idea.
How would you assess the effectiveness of Special Envoy George Mitchell's efforts to move the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians forward, and what more can and should be done?
I once had a discussion with the late Sergio Vieira de Mello, who, as you know, was killed in 2003 in Baghdad. He was the UN Special Envoy. He was a Special Representative of the Secretary General. And he had served in almost every conflict since 1971. And he said the toughest negotiations, he said, were always with and between the parties in the Middle East. So one cannot underestimate how difficult this has been for Senator Mitchell, notwithstanding his enormous credentials and his qualifications, which of course make him the perfect fit for this job. It's just so difficult for anyone undertaking this exercise. And so we think that, notwithstanding the many trips, we think he's laid the foundations for now the launching of discussions on final status, and I think that's something to be commended.
In bringing this session to a close, there's one factotum I didn't mention in the introductory remarks, and that is that there are blocks of countries within the United Nations, and there is an Arab bloc for various needs and purposes. But prior to the most recent election of the current incumbent of the United Nations Secretary Generalship, all 22 Arab countries voted for this individual to be their representative and their candidate for the Secretary Generalship of the United Nations. no small honor. And the last question is not so much a question, it's a statement. It says, I am in the 8th grade, and I enjoyed listening to your speech about peace. And I think on behalf of this audience, we could say that the rest of us are in kindergarten, and we too enjoyed it and learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.